David Brewster here on the Brewster's Millions of Rants, and this is What Was I Thinking? And this episode is going to address some questions and comments and messages I've received here on YouTube and also on Facebook. And I just want to clear the air, for some newer viewers and also some long-standing, regular viewers, just to explain myself and what I'm attempting to do on the channel here. But the first thing I'm going to share is this image with a channel guide, and that will help you understand what the different shows on my channel are, like Chord Play or Three for All or Brewster's Millions of Rants or Just the Tip or whatever. But this is going to help you understand the playlists and the different shows on my channel. I've received a lot of messages and comments regarding transcriptions or tabs, for these lessons and this material, and they are available on Patreon. And there are PDF and guitar profiles just waiting, for late night lesson supporters. But it's not everything. I didn't make PDF or notation files for the chord play episodes because a lot of those songs and examples are protected by copyright, which Hal Leonard owns the copyright and print rights for a lot of this music. And that's one of my publishers, so I definitely don't want to get on their bad side or break those copyright laws. So I'm attempting to skate around them. But you can definitely find, Three for All and Breaking Chords and Brewster's Millions of Rants and Scales and Tales, episodes notated and available on Patreon. Next up is Shred School, and I did mention this last spring, and I was trying to put this together in time, like maybe in the summer. I think I said something about July or August, and it just hasn't happened yet. There's actually a lot of work involved, turning an instructional book into an instructional video. But what I'm going to do is turn this into an instructional video, and it'll be available on Patreon. And I do have one method available on Patreon right now. It's called Fretboard Fitness, and it's a bunch of workouts and exercises to boost your technique. And technically, Shred School is a continuation of that. It's, technically a technique book. It's not really a shred book, but I just like the title Shred School and kind of went with it. But there's a lot of examples, as far as shaping up your picking and fretting and legato, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. So this will be available as soon as I can put it together, and I also have an idea I'm putting together for chord play too, to kind of make up for the lack of those, notation files. But I think I'm going to do something similar with chord play and make a chord-focused book. I don't really want to turn this into an upgrades and updates video, which I do have one of those planned for early next year, but I wanted everybody to know that I did change the humbucker in my Paul Reed Smith here. And I literally took the JB humbucker that was in my old Strat pickguard, took it out and put it in, this Paul Reed Smith, and it's made a huge difference. I'm much happier with this new or different pickup, even though it's technically not new. It's about a 10-year-old JB humbucker, but it still works. There's nothing wrong with it. So my Strat has a Shawbucker, my Les Paul has a JB in the bridge, and now this Paul Reed Smith also has a JB in the bridge. And it made a huge difference. Now, finally, for the real meat of this rant video or episode, what was I thinking? So when I originally put this channel together, which we're approaching 3 years now, it'll be 3 years at the end of January. But when I originally put this together, I had a basic idea of what I wanted to try to do, but I didn't really know what I was getting into until I started actually doing this, and I kind of, changed my direction and kind of came up with some ideas and brainstorming for different ideas. So I'm definitely very interested in continuing to do this. I like this, building these lessons and, receiving the feedback and talking with, viewers and people out there and really feeling like I'm helping people, because when I dive into the comment section or look at messages I've received, there's a lot of happy people out there. You're inspired, you're thanking me, it sounds like you're practicing some new ideas or maybe getting exposed to some new players or bands or albums or whatever. But that's the whole point, because really, this channel doesn't have anything to do with me. It has to do with you. And I'm trying to basically shake things up in my own little way, trying to be random and throwing out, some different bands or artists or ideas or concepts or approaches, and just really shaking things up, and in a roundabout way, this is what you should do as a musician, as a guitarist. Every time you pick up your guitar, you should try to learn something new, do something that you can't do, or further refine, something that you're working on. And it's really hard, but this, kind of format that I'm using, which is just completely random, and hitting all these different styles and players and eras and whatever, that's kind of a simulation of what you should try to do as a musician. So I've had viewers ask, for complete solos, complete songs, transcribing and showing an entire album and stuff like that, note for note, transcriptions. And it should be pretty obvious, if you've been watching my channel, that's not what I'm doing at all. I'm not showing you note for note anything, really. We're getting close with a lot of this stuff, whether it's riffs or licks or chords or whatever. But I'm just being very relaxed and kind of playful and creative with a lot of this, because at the end of the day, regardless of what I'm attempting to do, whether I'm working on like a Steve Vai solo, or maybe it's Paganini or something, or it could be acoustic like Michael Hedges or something like that, or whoever it is. At the end of the day, even though I do spend a lot of time working on other people's music, at the end of the day, I always bring it back to me. Because, not to sound selfish or, whatever, but it is really all about me, just like it should be all about you, while you're practicing. So even though I have worked on a lot of music, Hendrix and, Van Halen and Zeppelin and Dream Theater and Tool and a whole bunch of stuff, even when I'm working on somebody else's music, I constantly, redirect it or bring it back to me. And I might make adjustments, as far as fingerings or the way something was played, or I might adjust and change things as far as tone, or I might just take an idea from somebody and then experiment with it and make mutations and variations, and try to be as creative and playful as a musician as I can. I don't like, trying to pretend that I'm somebody else. I'm David Brewster. I'm not Jimi Hendrix or Vinnie Vincent or whoever. It's like, no, I'm going to be myself with the guitar. I want to find myself, find my own tone, play my own way, and when I was younger, it was different. Obviously when I was younger, I was frantically trying to copy Van Halen solos and Satriani and Steve Vai and Yngwie and whoever. But then as I got older, after I'd spent years and years, working on songs and licks and music, then I wanted to know, like, what can I do? It's cool to hear what everybody else is doing, but what can I do? Like, what's inside of me as far as music or ideas? And once I started to think that way, I really started to push myself in that direction, being creative and original and trying to really tap into myself instead of just constantly tapping into somebody else. There are exceptions to this. There are always exceptions. Let's say hypothetically you got hired to be in a Kiss tribute band and you're going to be Ace Frehley. All right, that's awesome. And in that band, you're going to need to be as close to Ace Frehley as you can possibly be. You need to look like him and play like him, sound like him, act like him. And that's what tribute bands do. They literally become those artists that they're replicating or copying. Or cover bands, the same way. Like if you're in a bar band or a cover band, people coming to the show and they want to hear, the familiar song, they want to hear that signature solo, and they want to hear, the music the way it sounds like on the radio or on the album. So that's different. There's a time and a place for that. But as far as tapping into yourself, that's a completely different approach and strategy, as far as practicing. Because you're not really worried about becoming Jimmy Page or Steve Vai or CC DeVille or whoever it is. You're trying to figure out who you are, as a musician or as a guitarist, and that's really hard. So I guess really what I'm trying to say here is music's an art form, right? It really is. It's an auditory art form instead of a visual, art form like painting or sculptures or something like that. But I constantly relate music to other forms of art because it's not only related, but you can actually see these connections. So the way I like to look at it is if you were taking an art class, a visual art class, let's say we're painting with watercolors or something. So would you rather study other painters, technique and style, and then copy another painter, exact, and you're recreating somebody else's art? Or would you rather kind of play with your own ideas and canvas and paints and make your own artwork? So let me show you what I mean. We're going to take a very brief section from a very famous song, and then we're going to play with it. We're going to experiment with it and turn it into something else. Right, the fill we're going to borrow from Metal Health takes place right before the second verse. This is like a minute and a half in the song. It's built around A minor pentatonic. It's very simple, but something like this. Pentatonic right there, right out of the box. And we're basically just doing this kind of sidestepping, really simple fill, but it sounds great. It fits the song perfectly, but it's like that. You're pentatonic, technically, right? All right, let's take that. And the first thing right off the bat I think of is let's just move that down an octave, right? So instead of playing it way up here, let's just move it down an octave and play A minor pentatonic again, like this. Same lick, right? Just in a different location on the fretboard because we're an octave lower. Alright, now let's play around with, let's move on just 2 strings and see if we can find this. Let's see how we can play this, in other ways. So let's do it like this. Right there, it's the exact same phrase, right? But now we're doing it this way. On the high E and the B right there. It sounds a little different because I have to shift, to make my way down there, but it's the same notes. Another variation, just reverse that phrase. So instead of this, create a variation going the other way like this. Or whatever you can think of. And since that's A minor pentatonic, we can basically move that through all 5 positions of the minor pentatonic scale. So let's just keep that in one position like this. And then move to the previous, shape of A minor pentatonic right here. And then the previous shape right here. And the previous shape here. And the previous shape here. And then an octave lower right there. And then go ahead and complete it and go all the way down here. Let's create another variation of this and move even further away than where we originally started from. So we started with this. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep that kind of, mismatched or offset note. But then I'm going to fill it out with this pentatonic bass sequence like this. And then do that all the way down. And there I'm really just keeping that contour, that descending kind of movement. And then filled out the rest with the pentatonic scale. And then do it again right there on the next 2 strings. So even though that doesn't sound anything like this, they don't sound alike, but I do know where that idea came from. It's like, oh yeah, I kind of borrowed that little bit of the mental health lick. Just one concept, but that's what you should do, when you're building variations and these mutations of all these different licks and ideas that you're working on. That's going to wrap this episode of Brewster's Millions of Rants with What Was I Thinking? And I put this together once again just to clear the air and address some questions and comments that I've noticed popping up on YouTube and on Facebook. And I just really don't want to leave anybody behind. I don't want to confuse or frustrate anybody. And I'm not trying to be sneaky or whatever. It's like, no, this is literally how I teach and how I do things. And I really do feel a lot of people out there should just relax, just breathe, just be yourself and allow yourself to find yourself as a musician. Whether it's equipment and gear, or it could be things that you're practicing, or songs that you're selecting, or a style of music that you're tackling, or whatever it is. Be yourself. Allow yourself to relax, allow yourself to make mistakes. It's okay if you pick up your guitar and you play, 9 out of 10 chords wrong. Well, at least you played that one chord right, is how you should look at it. Don't beat yourself up. Everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes every single time I pick up the guitar. I make mistakes. So anyway, you know what to do. Leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to my lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.